there's been, I noticed quite a lot of discussion on the idea of how to incentivise people who haven't got jobs to get jobs, and more training on writing resumes and things. I think it's been ignoring the point that there aren't that many jobs out there. I mean, I know personally from people who've applied for jobs and turned out to be one of several hundred for one single job. I think that's been glossed over.
You're absolutely right, and this is why recessions are awful. And we are currently in probably the first of the living memory of many people alive in Australia today. And that lack of economic activity is, that's what it creates. It creates low welfare, it creates low opportunities. I'm the mother of 2 young people, and I fear for them at the moment. Right, for the next couple of years, it's going to be awful trying to get a job. But that is the core of the argument: is that we need to get the economy going in order to create more jobs. And it's not that the robots are stealing our jobs, or that something else is coming down and stealing our jobs. It's that, we have created a recession essentially on the back of COVID-19, and we now have to dig ourselves out of that somehow. Now, one proposal has been a jobs guarantee, and we have not talked about that yet, but maybe you might be moving in that direction. There are a couple of issues with this. The idea of a government jobs guarantee is that, you get a guaranteed amount of work every week, every month from the government. It could be something like 20 to 25 hours. In order to allow you time to look for a job, a real job on your own. But that work would be what? How would the government use you? Now, hopefully not just painting rocks, because that's almost demeaning, right? Then you have a sense of, well, why am I even here? And you have the psychological issues that I spoke of before developing in longer run scenarios. But it's also a problem, even if the government can find a place to soak up that labor in a productive way, it's the problem of the potential that it will then crowd out private industry. And we, generally speaking, don't feel, I think, broadly in society today, that we want a much bigger role for government, or really a much lesser role for government in society. So that means that we sort of want the government to be providing some jobs, but not too many jobs and in the right places. And so it's actually a more difficult administrative scenario than is often admitted. Although I do think that the old work for the dole, unfortunately named scheme, was evaluated somewhat recently and came out looking pretty good. So that kind of idea may be able to be shoehorned into something that's politically feasible.
Quickly, I think obviously job creation is important, and that's what we did in the post-economic depression in the 30s in terms of New Deal, and now obviously governments left-leaning are talking about Green New Deals, for example, so that it's not just jobs giving everyone a shovel, but that it's job that it helps to address some synergy between environmental, social and economic goals. But I also think the fact we haven't talked so much about that job creation echoes really a public discourse, in the sense that we've kind of psychologised unemployment to the extent, largely I think at least, and if you read any of the tabloids, that the problem of unemployment has become the problem of the unemployed, right? And that tends to be where we focus on character and habit. And yes, we need to fix a whole bunch of things in terms of how we get people to fit jobs, but we shouldn't start the discussion by assuming that people don't have intrinsic motivation, that they need to be externally incentivised for all the reasons we've said, that work matters, all the work matters, right? But we have really kind of made it a very individualistic understanding since the late 1970s.
Sorry to do it again, but I think this is another area where economists hear people talking about what economists say and don't recognise it. But maybe some people are doing it, but my reading, or when I hear the story about incentivising people to get jobs, it's not an attack on their character at all. It's a recognition that humans follow incentives, and if you can set the incentives right, you will adjust their behaviour, not because they're good or bad people. There's no moral value judgment on that at all. They're just humans following incentives. I follow incentives. You follow. Everyone here follows incentives. Unemployed people aren't different in that way. So that's. I don't think it's a character issue there. I don't think there's anything better or worse about their character, and it doesn't need to come into it. It's just an issue of, can we get the incentives right? And if we get the incentives wrong, we might accidentally incentivize bad behavior. Going back to the original question you asked about jobs, I should apologize. I'm just falling into economic jargon again. When I talk about an elasticity of labor demand, that literally is creating more jobs. That's how you say it in English, right? If we need a translator here to translate economics to English. If they did, every time I said elasticity of labor demand, they would translate that into, that means more jobs. And it's an uncomfortable thing for a lot of people to talk about, but the reality is a lower minimum wage would lead to more jobs existing. Now, that raises the problem of the working poor, which is why I was on the front foot saying the solution to my mind is just give more money directly to the working poor. Then you can drop the minimum wage, then you have more jobs, then more people could be working.